Okay. Now we're recording.
Okay, go ahead.
Here we are. Well, the title of my workshops, the things that I do with students, are called "At Home," and I kind of like to call the interviews that I do with people the same thing, "At Home." So I've always been interested in books more than anything. I mean, I earned my living as a newspaper shooter and a magazine shooter, just like you did. But books have always been on my mind. So when you came out with your comedian's book, I immediately gravitated to that, and I thought, wow, this is amazing, really interesting book, and absolutely fits Arthur Grace. And I met you in Washington, but I did not know about this work. This is the thing, the work that you did, I guess, mostly for Time Magazine. Is that right?
Right, right.
In Eastern Europe, in the behind enemy lines, so to speak. uh, I just didn't know about that work. I knew of you in Washington. I knew of your contract with Time Magazine, but I really didn't know the extent of your Eastern European Soviet Union work. And so I was so happy to see this book. Now, and and I'm going to stop talking, and you're going to start talking, okay? But the no, but the beauty, or maybe the tragedy, of all of this is that when I first saw your book was a few months back. It was before the war in Ukraine, for example. It was before that when I first saw this work,
Hmm.
and I thought, well, this is amazing, and let's take a look back and let's see what was going on during the Cold War. And now, don't we have a manifestation of all of that right this minute? I mean, aren't we actually in one of the in the worst phase of that Cold War right now? Give me your opinion on that first of all.
Yeah, it's really worse in Russia than it is in Ukraine in terms of the book. What we saw in during the Cold War, which was repression, the lack of freedom, lack of choice, and all of a sudden Putin is starting to mobilize 300,000 men, and he's pulling them off the street. I mean, this is and people are fleeing in jets and airliners to get the hell out of there. So, and also deprivation when the Westerners moved out, when they did the sanctions, all of a sudden, a lot of things they were used to are disappearing, the finer things in life, shall we say. And so that's going on. And they're all of a sudden they're deprived of many things like they were in the old days. Nowhere nearly as bad. But the really bad part is that they're pulling people off the street now against their will to go fight.
Yeah, and it's like the things that we grew up with, the Cold War that we grew up with, and you photographing in places where I still have never been. Uh, the zones that defined the Cold War: East Germany, Poland, perhaps most of the Soviet Union. Um, it's so amazing that it's and so sad, so tragic that it's coming back to us again. And I'm sure that some of the things that you photographed and witnessed in your a Cold War album uh, are still on the minds of, obviously, the apparent losers of the Cold War, the Soviet Union, and specifically Putin. I guess that's just gnawing on him. I guess that's gnawing on him. What do you think?
Yeah, well, Putin slowly came out of nowhere and became a dictator. And so they've been under his repression, his repressive regime for, I don't know, 15, 20 years now. But he let the West come in. It was good for keeping people happy, good for the economy, good for everything. But the freedoms that you and I enjoy, certain things never could happen in Russia. But you had to watch what you say, and you had to watch what you do, and you didn't want to get on the wrong side of the government. So you had to watch what you said, and there were microphones, hidden microphones, all that spy versus spy business that was used all the time. And when we were in Poland, for instance, you always assumed that you were being watched or recorded, and that was true. That's the way they operated. So what you said and what you did, you'd have to kind of lose it. I mean, let's say you suspect there was a microphone in your hotel room, then might maybe you go down to the bar or the hotel or outside, and where you walked and you were being followed, then you had to figure out a way to kind of get away undetected, and so no one was following you. Which it's not every day and not all the time, but it was on your mind. And the one thing you didn't want to wind up, where you didn't want to wind up, is in police headquarters being detained. So you can't do any work if you're in jail. That's basically the a rule of
Oh,
thumb.
that's yeah. Well, I think I mean, you and I could reminisce all day long, and I don't think people really want to hear that. Here's the thing: the new young generation of, well, they really don't. I mean, you and I, well, it's fun for us to talk about, but the fact is, there's a whole new generation of photographers and reporters out there who are looking at the current situation. And as I said a few months ago, your book might have been viewed one way, but now people have got to really take a look at this. I think the new emerging photographers, or anybody who's interested in the political situation now, has got to see your book in a whole new light because they're just going to be interested in it. Now, the
Right.
one question I wanted to ask you though, you were able to get in. You were behind the scenes. All this surveillance was going on. You say at the same time they obviously allowed you to be there, and so there must have been some part of their public relations mechanism that wanted you there, documenting life there. And
Yeah, how it worked was you couldn't just waltz into these countries like you can now if there's a conflict going on. But anyway, you had to get a visa. So that's why so few people ever got into Eastern Europe. That's number one. They only let a small number in, especially photojournalists. They had crews like from the BBC or NBC or whatever. You didn't just say, I'm a freelance and I'm coming in. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Anyway, once you got in, why did they let you in? Especially in the early days in 77, 78, in the mid to late 70s, they let you in so you could tell the good story of what was going on. They wanted you to only photograph where they took you. So you had a guide or somebody from the press office or a tourist bureau who was with you all the time. Okay, you go to your hotel at night, whatever, you know you were being watched. But what's the program for tomorrow? Oh, we're going to take you to see a wonderful factory. We're going to take you to see a farm where, they're growing all these crops or whatever they wanted to show off. It's called the Potemkin Village. Okay, that they set things up all the time, and that's where they wanted you to go. And then you flag what's real, what you did when you got away from these people. So the object was to drift away, get away, and I called it, misdirection, deception, whatever, to be able to shoot what you wanted to shoot. When you're out in the countryside, it was the same thing. You'd have to figure out how to do it. An example of that was in Romania. There's a lake outside Bucharest where all the party elites, the Communist Party elites, had villas, huge villas with speedboats and manicured lawns, and we wanted to photograph that to show the dichotomy between the working people and the rich people, the elites. So how do we do it? Well, we booked with our tourist guide, our press spook, to take us on this lake to a monastery, a 15th century monastery that was on the lake. And while he was talking and looking away, I was photographing all the villas and the guards coming down the lawn. That's how we did it. So it was a kind of complex method of working, but the main goal was to get your photographs out and to the West, to your magazine, and not to get arrested or detained or thrown out. Because the minute you're thrown out, end of story.
and that's yeah, well, that's pretty interesting. I mean, that's pretty fair. I guess I had a slight taste of what you're talking about in North Vietnam when I was there right after the war. That was similar situation, and in China and Cuba too. But you were right in the heart of it. Is there one particular image or set of images that we could show that uh, most references the feeling that you had about the Iron Curtain in the communist world.
If you look, I mean, there are different areas that you need to look at to understand it. Okay, one is repression. Okay, if you want to show that in my book, you go to the series I shot of a flower cross. Okay, martial law had just happened a few months prior to me getting there. In the main square, there's a flower cross, and surrounding the square are military trucks and soldiers because of martial law. And they were keeping a tight lid on that square because the flower cross represented, um, you know, that they're getting their views against what was going on. It was their protest. So where I was looking, it's their protest. So I can't go near it because not only are the military all over the place, so I'm in my hotel room in the Victoria Hotel across from the square, and I go to somebody else's room, had a better view from like the fourth floor, and I shot with a 400 millimeter through the curtains this sequence of a woman going to the cross, kneeling down and praying, a soldier coming over. All of a sudden, you see her being marched out with her hands in the air in front of a crowd of people. And the final thing is, she got her hands way in the air, and she's getting arrested just for doing that. Second thing you could see repression is a picture of a secret policeman coming behind three students who I had talked to prior to that. A reporter and I had talked to, just asking, this is in 82 during martial law, about what was going on and whatever. We walked away, and as we walked away, got to the other side of the street, the secret policeman popped out of the trees, out of the bushes, and startled these guys. You could see the looks in their face. And I took the picture and then kind of scurried away before they saw me doing that. I don't know how many frames they took, maybe one. But later we went back and talked to them, and they said they were told not to talk to Westerners. Behave yourself. You're not allowed to talk to Western journalists or Westerners. So that's another picture. The other type of picture is, playing ping pong in East Germany on a cement table with a board for a net. And, that's what they had for a ping pong table, or the average person. So there's a series of pictures like that, you see. And then you see how backwards it was in terms of the farming pictures. People using literally, a horse and a plow to do their fields in 1989. I know, because I shot it with a 2.25 Rolleiflex on that trip. And it was like time stood still from the early 1900s. So those pictures are important. And then the pictures of people being forced to attend a giant rally. And then there's thousands of people inside an auditorium, and the dictator speaking. So these are the kinds of pictures. And then there are the everyday people, everyday pictures.
You were up there. You were up there at the podium shooting. I think there's one picture in a classic old theater. You're right behind. I don't know who it is actually. I didn't look at the caption carefully, and I can't remember where you were. But the picture. But you're right. You're right there with the speaker. How did you do that?
Because once you get a visa, they had a different concept of what you were doing. Okay, they wanted you to see this because they didn't see any downside to it, or downside to the evening stadium shot. For the dictator, for Ceausescu. Hey, this is great. Look at all the parade. Look at all the soldiers. Look at them in perfect formation. And to us, it looks like a staged whatever for a dictator because his face is everywhere. So you have to look at it through a different lens, and hopefully the book points out those things: repression, economic deprivation, lack of goods and services, technology, like the women in the beauty shop. That hair dryer is from the 1930s.
You did an amazing job of being what is loosely, I don't even like this term, where street photography. I don't even know what that means, but you have a lot of really wonderful candid moments in there, and I'm sure you were in a situation that they wanted you to be in, but you're still getting that very special moment that you got so much in this book. Listen, I really love the book. It's very well printed. It's got some amazing moments. Yeah, see, some of these pictures that I'm sure that they wanted you to take, I was kind of glad to see them.
Right.
because
That's
we had
everyday
a
life.
different. Yeah,
That's
that's right.
everyday life. That's mainly what I shot was everyday life. That's really
Yeah, that's right. That's
what
right.
the
That
book's
is
about.
mostly
Yeah,
that's what the book is about.
yeah,
And so it's good to see that even in this repressive regime, there's a certain part of human nature that's going to come out no matter what, right? And you can't
right.
really stop it. But
That's the most important. That's the most important part of the book is the humanity that people are still living their lives, finding happiness where they could or fun where they could. Those kinds of pictures are really important to the book because that's
oh
daily life.
yeah,
People survived through these things and had some modicum of happiness and whatnot.